It wasn't the sound of laughter. It wasn't applause. It wasn't even silence, the kind that creeps into a room when a joke bombs or a microphone fails. It was a gasp, the collective, involuntary intake of breath from 3,000 people. One sharp sound that sliced through the glitz of the Las Vegas Strip and shattered the illusion that everything was under control. Dean Martin froze in his dressing room, drink in hand, just 20 feet from the stage. In show business, he'd learned to read sounds like a second language. Laughter meant the timing worked. Applause meant they were yours. Silence, that meant you'd lost them. But a gasp like this? That meant something had gone horribly, irreversibly wrong. Dean set the glass down slowly. He could hear a voice from the stage, Sammy's voice, but it wasn't the same. It trembled. It cracked. And then came another voice. One Dean hadn't heard in years but could never forget. Louder, furious, slurring with alcohol. You think you're funny, Sammy? You think you can make jokes about me? Dean's blood went cold. That voice didn't belong to a critic or a heckler. It belonged to a man who controlled half the casinos on the Strip. A man who'd sent people to the hospital for less. A man whose very name made security guards step aside and showgirls disappear behind velvet curtains. Dean didn't need to ask who it was. Everyone in Vegas knew that voice. And Dean Martin was about to do something that no one had ever dared to do before. Under the searing lights of the Sands Hotel showroom, Sammy Davis Jr. was mid-sentence, mid-impression, actually, when the atmosphere shifted. He had the crowd rolling just moments ago, channeling Frank Sinatra with that classic ring-a-ding-ding, baby. His timing was perfect. His movements sharp. It was Sammy at his peak. And then, without warning, a man in the third row stood up. Tall, thick, expensive suit clinging to his bloated frame. 3 other men flanked him, watching silently, but all eyes locked on him, because he didn't belong in the act. He didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He climbed the stage stairs like he owned them, like he owned everything. And in a way he did. The audience chuckled nervously. They thought it was a bit. A surprise cameo. Sammy played along for half a second, trying to read the moment. Then he saw the man's face, red, furious, and sloshed with rage. You think you're funny, Sammy? No mic. No spotlight. Just raw fury projected across the room. The band stopped playing. You could hear the air conditioning now. 3,000 people fell into dead silence. Sammy blinked, confused. Angelo, I wasn't talking about you. 3 nights ago, you made a mob joke, the man growled. I was there. I heard it. Sammy's pulse thudded in his ears. The joke was harmless. A playful jab, my friends in the hospitality industry who make offers you can't refuse. He said it all the time. Audiences loved it. But this man wasn't laughing. He never laughed. And now, here he was, drunk and unhinged on Sammy's stage, dragging a private grudge into the public spotlight. I make jokes about everyone, Sammy tried, his voice calm but trembling. Frank, Dean, myself. You're not their equal, Sammy. And then it happened. Angelo spit a slur, a word Sammy had heard his whole life, but never like this. Not here. Not now. Not in front of a showroom packed with tourists, high rollers, and executives. The N-word exploded through the speakers like a grenade. Time stopped. Sammy's expression turned to stone. He didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't speak. But everyone in the room saw it. The hurt, the humiliation, the quiet fury boiling under the surface. Don't ever call me that, Sammy said, his voice steady now. Controlled. Angelo stepped closer, looming. Or what? You think your Rat Pack buddies are gonna save you? They're not here, Sammy. It's just you and me. Sammy knew what was coming. His brain told him to run. But his soul, his dignity, they held the line. I'm asking you respectfully to leave my stage. Angelo smirked. You don't ask me to do anything. And then his fist flew, a right hook that smashed into Sammy's face, hard. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Sammy stumbled, slipped, and hit the stage floor. His lips split open. Blood welled up. One of his hands braced against the floor. The other clutched his face. He didn't move. Angelo stood over him like a predator. Get up so I can hit you again. And still no one moved. Security froze. Staff pretended not to see. No one in Las Vegas was stupid enough to lay a hand on a man like Angelo. Except maybe one. And he was already walking toward the stage. 20 feet away, behind a thick velvet curtain, Dean Martin heard the slur. It cut through the showroom like broken glass. Dean didn't rush. He didn't swear. He didn't raise his voice. He simply set his drink down and stood up, jaw tightening in a way that only the people closest to him recognized. That word changed everything. Dean had known Sammy long enough to understand the weight of moments like this. Sammy had faced humiliation before. Bans, threats, quiet rules no one ever wrote down. But this was different. This was public. This was violent. And this was meant to break him. Dean took 2 steps toward the stage entrance when a hand grabbed his arm. It was a stagehand. Young, pale, terrified. "Dean, don't," the kid whispered. "That's Angelo Martinelli." Dean didn't turn around. "I know who he is. He's killed people," the stagehand said, voice shaking. "You don't get involved with men like that. Not in this town." Dean gently pulled his arm free. "Sammy's my friend." The stagehand swallowed hard. "Dean, he'll kill you." Dean paused for half a second. "Then he kills me." There was no bravado in his voice. No theatrics. Just a fact, stated calmly, like he was ordering a drink or checking the time. Behind the curtain, Sammy was still on the floor, blood on his lip, a mob boss towering over him. 3,000 people watching a man be humiliated in real time. Dean understood something in that moment. This wasn't just about stepping in for a friend. This was about drawing a line, one that had never been drawn before. A line that said there were still places the mob couldn't go, people they couldn't touch, lines they couldn't cross. If Dean turned back now, that line would disappear forever. So he didn't hesitate. He pushed through the curtain and walked straight onto the stage. Dean Martin didn't run. He didn't shout. He walked onto the stage like it was any other night, cool, confident, but with eyes locked on one thing: Sammy Davis Jr., bleeding on the floor. Then he looked up. Angelo Martinelli stood over Sammy, fists clenched, rage burning behind drunken eyes. He turned toward the movement and saw Dean approaching, slow, deliberate, dangerous in his calm. And he smiled. "Dean Martin," Angelo slurred, loud enough for the entire showroom to hear. "Perfect. Maybe you can teach your friend here about respect." Dean didn't take the bait. He walked until he stood between Sammy and Angelo, his body forming a human barrier. The entire audience held their breath. "Sammy," Dean said quietly, not taking his eyes off Angelo. "You okay?" Sammy wiped blood from his lip, nodded. "I'm okay, Dean. You should go back to your dressing room." Dean didn't move. "You need to leave," he said, eyes still locked with Angelo. "Now." Angelo's grin widened. "Or what? You gonna sing me off the stage?" Dean didn't flinch. His voice stayed even, deadly calm. "I'm asking you once. Leave this stage. Leave this showroom. Don't come back." Angelo stepped closer, so close that Dean could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You asking me?" Angelo sneered. "You work for us, Dean. This casino, we own it. You perform here because we let you perform. So maybe you should be the one walking off stage." That was the moment. The point where most men would back down, make a joke, defuse the tension. But Dean took a half step forward until they were toe-to-toe. "I don't work for anyone," he said, voice like steel. "I work with people. And you just assaulted my friend in front of 3,000 witnesses. So here's what's going to happen." Dean's voice dropped even lower. "You're going to walk off this stage right now, or I'm going to make sure every performer in this city knows what you did. And good luck filling your showrooms when nobody wants to work for you." Angelo's smile vanished. He looked out across the showroom. 3,000 pairs of eyes watched in frozen silence. His 3 associates stood up from their seats in the 3rd row, waiting, coiled. One word from Angelo, and this would become a bloodbath. But Dean didn't move. He didn't blink. He stood there, no bodyguards, no backup, just raw defiance in the face of a man who'd killed for less. 10 seconds passed, then 20, then 30, and finally, Angelo stepped back. "You just made a big mistake, Dean." Dean didn't look away. "Maybe, but Sammy is my friend. And if protecting him is a mistake, I'll make it every time." Angelo's lip curled. He turned and glared down at Sammy one last time. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Dean replied coldly. Then, turning to the stunned security guards, he said, "Please escort Mr. Martinelli out of the building." They hesitated. For a moment, it seemed even security couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Then they moved. Slowly, cautiously, but Angelo shrugged them off. "I walk myself out." He turned to Dean one last time. "You're gonna regret this." Dean's eyes never left him. "I doubt it." And just like that, the most feared man in Vegas walked off stage. Behind him, The silence held for one last breath. Then a single person clapped. Then 10. Then 100. Then all 3,000 people in the showroom stood and roared. It was the loudest ovation Dean Martin ever received, without singing a single note. As the final note of applause faded, Dean Martin didn't bask in the spotlight. He didn't take a bow. He didn't even smile. He simply reached down, extended his hand, and pulled Sammy to his feet. "You okay, pal?" Dean asked. Sammy's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that, Dean. He's going to come after you now." Dean shrugged, brushing it off like a wrinkle on his tux. "Let him try. You're my brother, Sammy. Nobody touches you. Not while I'm alive." The ovation roared again. It wasn't just applause anymore. It was relief, defiance, gratitude, and awe, all wrapped into one. Dean turned to the microphone. No script, no comedy bit, just raw emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that interruption, but I want to make something very clear. Sammy Davis Jr. is one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. He's also one of the best men I know. And if anyone disrespects him, threatens him, or lays a hand on him, they answer to me." The crowd erupted. Dean handed the mic to Sammy. His lip still bleeding, voice trembling but proud, Sammy nodded to the band. "Let's take it from Mr. Bojangles." And just like that, the show went on. Sammy sang through the pain. Dean walked off stage into the shadows. And backstage, Las Vegas held its breath. Tommy, the young stagehand, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Dean, what have you done?" Dean poured himself another drink. "Whatever Angelo's going to do, he'll do. But he learned something tonight. You don't touch my friends." Word spread before the last song even finished. Within an hour, every casino floor boss, pit manager, and showroom booker in town knew what had happened. Dean Martin had publicly humiliated Angelo Martinelli, made him back down, escorted him out like a common thug. No one had ever done that before. Some said Dean was finished, that a hit was already in motion. Others said he'd just become the most dangerous man in Vegas, not because he was violent, but because he wasn't afraid. That night, Dean's phone rang off the hook. Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford, Tony Curtis, Jerry Lewis, a dozen entertainers calling with one question: "Are you alive?" Then came Frank Sinatra, furious, not at Dean, but at himself. "If I'd been there, we'd have thrown that bastard off the stage together." But the most surprising call of all came just after 3 a.m. A voice Dean didn't recognize. Calm, polished, cold. "Mr. Martin, I heard what happened tonight." Dean's chest tightened. He was ready for the threat, the warning, the promise of retaliation. "Yeah? You here to tell me I stepped out of line?" "No, I'm here to tell you that Angelo was out of line." Dean blinked. "Excuse me. He shouldn't have been on that stage. He shouldn't have hit your friend. And he definitely shouldn't have said what he said. That kind of behavior makes us look like animals. Bad for business." Dean sat in silence. "You're not calling to threaten me?" "No, Mr. Martin. I'm calling to let you know Angelo's been told. Leave you and Mr. Davis alone. Permanently." Dean exhaled. But then the voice added one last thing. "Don't make a habit of this. We can't have performers challenging us every time they don't like something. Angelo was wrong. That's the only reason this is over." "Understood," Dean said quietly. The line went dead, and Dean realized something chilling. He hadn't just won the night. He'd survived it, barely. The next day, a message arrived. Quiet, subtle, but unmistakable. Dean was to meet someone. Not at a smoky backroom or a casino suite. Those were for show. This was different. The note told him to go to a coffee shop. Off the strip. Out of sight. Out of reach. He didn't hesitate. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just Dean, a black suit, dark glasses, and a quiet determination not to flinch, no matter who was waiting. The man sitting at the table wasn't Angelo. He was older, leaner, smarter. This was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. His presence was the threat. He gestured for Dean to sit. "I wanted to say it to your face," he said. "What you did last night. That took guts. Stupid guts, but guts." Dean didn't smile. The man stirred his coffee. "Angelo's been told, stay away from you. From Mr. Davis, from anyone in your circle. That's not a request. That's a decision." Dean nodded once. "Appreciated. But understand something," the man said, leaning in slightly. "You won last night because Angelo was drunk. Because he assaulted someone in public. Because he used language that even we don't tolerate." He paused. You won because he was so obviously wrong. Even we had to admit it. Dean met his gaze. So this is a one-time thing. Exactly. You crossed that line again, and you may not be lucky twice. Dean sat back. He understood. He always had. Fair. The man stood. We respect loyalty, Mr. Martin. We respect strength. But don't confuse that with freedom. Last night was the exception. He reached out his hand. Dean shook it. Deal. It was over. But not forgotten. That meeting cemented it. Dean Martin had stared down the mob and walked away standing. Not because he was fearless, but because, in that moment, he cared more about protecting Sammy than protecting himself. And in doing so, he did what few ever had. He forced the mob to back down, not with guns, not with threats, but with loyalty. Real loyalty. And that terrified them more than anything. A few days later, another message came. No threats. No instructions. Just a name, a time, and a place. Another meeting. This time, Dean knew exactly what it was. Not a handshake. Not a thank you. A warning, delivered face to face. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Mid-morning sunlight streamed through dusty windows. Dean slid into the booth across from the same man who'd called him days earlier. No small talk. The mob boss leaned in, quiet but firm. I just wanted to make sure you understand what happened here, Mr. Martin. Dean didn't respond. He waited. What you did took balls. Real balls. And I meant what I said. Angelo's out. He won't touch you. He won't touch Sammy. That's been made very clear. The man sipped his coffee. But don't confuse justice with leverage. Dean tilted his head. You got away with it because everything that happened that night, the stage, the punch, the slur, it was so bad that even we couldn't ignore it. It made us look like animals. He paused. But if it ever happens again, and the circumstances aren't so clean, if it's not in front of 3,000 witnesses, or it's not a drunken fool like Angelo, there won't be another meeting. There won't be another handshake. Dean nodded slowly. I understand. The mob boss looked him dead in the eyes. Good. Because this town may run on money, Mr. Martin, but behind the money, it runs on order. And you shook that order. That can't happen twice. Dean extended his hand. Then we won't let it happen again. They shook. The message was clear. He'd won once. That was it. And yet, something else had happened that night. Something deeper than fear or fame or power. Because for all the threats, for all the mob rules and backstage politics, Dean Martin had proved something unshakable, not to the mob, but to the one person who needed it most. Sammy. From that night on, he never had to wonder who had his back. Years later, Sammy Davis Jr. would be asked, dozens of times, what held the Rat Pack together? Was it Frank and Apos' leadership? The money? The fame? He always gave the same answer. Frank was the leader. No question. He brought us together. But Dean was the one who'd die for you. And he almost did. Because on March 8th, 1964, Dean Martin didn't just defend a friend. He stood between a black man and a powerful, racist mob boss. On a Las Vegas stage. In front of 3,000 people who had no idea what would happen next. And he didn't flinch. He didn't weigh the risk. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't check the contract or call for backup. He walked into the fire. Because to Dean, loyalty wasn't a brand. It wasn't an act. It was everything. That night became legend. Not because of a hit song. Not because of a jackpot or a scandal. But because one man, known for his charm and crooning in cocktails, drew a line in blood and said, you can control the casinos. You can control the money. But you do not touch my friends. And the mob, for once, stepped back. For the rest of his life, Sammy never forgot it. And whenever anyone asked him who his best friend was, he didn't even hesitate. Dean Martin.